So hello everyone, my name is Hadrien, and I work for Trase. So we try to bring the blockchain to business and develop proof of concept applications. So my presentation will build a little bit further on the previous ones, but in a more realistic context. So we worked together with Lawbox to develop a office lease agreement, but we analyze the possibilities of using a smart contract in order to automate this process. So often when thinking about law and blockchain or documents and certification documents, etc., people think about the data vault or the immutable ledger aspect of blockchain. However, with the developments of blockchain 2.0, crypto 2.0, and these smart contracts that have been emerging, it's now also possible to create some more advanced functions and applications with blockchain technology. So smart contracts, they have been covered quite a lot so far in the previous presentations. So there's the aspect of legal enforceabilities, transferring a certain title to a digital means that was covered very widely before. But I would like to talk a little bit about the challenges and vulnerabilities as well of this. So smart contracts allows us to put certain restraints and certain conditions under which something needs to meet before it gets added to the blockchain, right? But all of this eventually is just a little piece of code, and as developers know, when you're writing code, there's always bugs, and this is a big challenge and vulnerability of smart contracts, is that you need to make sure that these smart contracts are written in a good, clean code, and that no outside data can come in to corrupt your system, basically. So in order to resolve this problem, at Trase, we always start with a problem analysis where we're going to look what the problem is, we're going to try and identify one of the aspects, and then translate this in a very basic process that we can then convert to a smart contract logic. So we create the proof of concept based on this, and then afterwards you can go towards an anticipation phase where you can see how this could fit in a more production-ready environment. With the office lease agreement of Lawbox, we decided to create a very basic smart contract. For instance, holding a deposit in escrow in a smart contract, and then releasing that when there's an end of a lease, or if there's a dispute, etc. This is quite a simple smart contract where there's not too much space for bugs or problems that could come in. Afterwards, the second step is to add some more extra business value once the first version works, and then the final step is to add advanced functionalities like automated payments and topographical surveys. Now, I also often hear the argument that yes, but we have a lot of data, and blockchain doesn't support a lot of data, etc. However, there are emergent technologies that kind of solve this problem. Like, for instance, Hyperledger has a project called Iroha, which supports petaflops of data that you can store on a blockchain. Of course, there's certain scalability issues as well. As you increase the amount of nodes, your performance will lower, but that's related to the consensus. So if you follow these steps, you can already come up with a much more realistic approach to building smart contracts, because let's be honest, they're a great technology, and it's something that we can see a lot of different solutions to problems, but it's very important to smooth this process into existing businesses, because if you're going to come in, you're going to say, oh, we can, solve everything, and everything can be automated, and the businesses will kind of be wary of this, because they'll feel like, oh, we're going to get replaced, or this is too complicated. So the idea is to really ease in with little pilot projects and proof of concepts. Next, the result that came out of our collaboration with Lawbox is that we managed to create a technical analysis of this office lease agreement, where we analyzed the flow of the different steps. Our conclusion was also that it would facilitate the administration work that often comes with these sort of contracts. So this was something that Benjamin also spoke about in the previous presentation, that he could see the added value of how blockchain and smart contracts could take out some of the paperwork and research. And in the anticipation phase, we thought about how certain other external data could be added to the smart contracts, and then we enter in the department of oracles that Nikita also briefly spoke about in the first presentation. So this is definitely part of the future challenges, is these off-chain data calls, or oracles as we call them, because when working with smart contracts, you're limited to the blockchain that you're using, and in order to add value or business value to these smart contracts, you need to be able to make off-chain data calls. Like, for instance, you could say, oh, trigger this action if it's raining outside, right? But then you're depending on the data provided by a weather station, and this data is not on the same blockchain that you're using. So you need an oracle that will interact in between both to send this message to the smart contracts and say, oh, it's raining outside today, now you can trigger. The big question also is that since you're relying on this weather station, how can you trust the data provided by this weather station? And this is still a big question mark that is unanswered today. The scalability issue, like I said, this is also a very hot topic right now when it comes to existing networks like Ethereum. They're really investing a lot of research in the Plasma and Casper for the more blockchain people in the crowd here. So, and then a last point also is adding the human element in the flow process. When we approach problems, often we also try to add the human aspect of thinking in a decentralized way. For instance, when we go back to the deposit escrow smart contract, there you could say, okay, the deposit can be released if the office space is left in a acceptable state, right? Okay, so who would verify this office space? Maybe the cleaning service, because they're usually the last ones in the evening. They can go check, oh, the office is clean, there's nothing destroyed, it's fine, we can release a deposit. But then you're still centralizing this service on one point of failure, which is the cleaning service. So what you could do is add a second element, which would be, oh, the last person in the office, the last office worker, will also check if the desk next to him or was okay. And then a third one could be that you hire a startup company that goes by all these offices that are rented out, and then see if they can check also randomly at unpredictable times if these office spaces are left in the good state. So in that way, you're kind of starting to create a decentralized structure, but not just with technology, but also with human elements. So when it comes to law, this human element is also difficult, because when you have agreements and there's problems and you need to have a judge's verdict that will say, oh, you know, this party is right or this party is wrong. In order to translate this into smart contracts is still very, very far ahead in the future, but it's definitely a good food for thought and a good challenge for tomorrow. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to accept them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so this is often a question as well that why blockchain, right? And you could apply this to any situation. So I'm actually also creating my own decision tree based on the ones that I've seen out there in the scene. And the 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 first question you have to ask yourself is, okay, is there a need for like a shared ledger, right? Is there a need for a shared database? And then the next step is, are there parties involved that mistrust each other? Or do you need an immutable ledger? Because these are kind of two separate aspects that you could cover in the blockchain, right? And then let's say, oh, you have several parties and they mistrust each other. Would they be ready to prepare? Would they be ready to trust an outside party, right? And in some cases, that's the case. You know, people say, "Oh, no problem. We can perfectly use Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services for this, and that's fine if that suits their needs." But in some cases, like we saw with the data identity, there people might not want to trust Uber with their data, and they would prefer for the data to be decentralized in order to keep this data more secure and not have a central point of failure. So to answer your question as well about whether or not sometimes smart contracts can add too much complication to certain processes, that can be the case, but on the other hand, you have to think about all the administration work that could be saved by automated this process. It could save a lot of paperwork and a lot of man hours. When I think about a case that the city of Dubai plans to have all the visa applications, car registrations on the blockchain, that will save them over 1 million man hours and a lot of different paperwork, etc., etc. So sometimes it can be complex, but the added value can be much more of a benefit. All right, thank you.